and to say a very good morning and thank you for joining us via StreamYard. Thank you, Dr. Deonita Damons, joining us all the way, and such an honor and a privilege to be chatting to you this morning.
Good morning, Jonathan, and good morning to your listeners.
Thank you for your time. And so just in way of the discussion, we're focusing on the whole reality that COVID-19 has had an impact on the workplace environment, especially for ladies. And so it's so great to be chatting to you about this. And it might be Women's Month, but working women in South Africa have little reason to celebrate, sadly. While everyone is facing unprecedented challenges as a result of the pandemic, women are bearing the brunt of the economic and social fallout of COVID-19, reversing years of progress for women's equality. And joined on the line with Dr. Deonita, an expert in career guidance at Boston City campus, to address the issues contributing to the regression and to look at possible solutions to help empower South African women in the workplace. So just run us through it quickly. How has this pandemic impacted on women in the workplace, Dr. Deonita?
I think we'll only come to realize the impact that COVID-19 has had on women in the workplace years from now, because it is an alarming the gender inequality that existed before and how it will impact on gender equality as we're going forward. The United Nations has got sustainable development goals that specifically focus on gender-related targets, and COVID-19 has delayed the realization of these gender-related targets. If you look at the job losses we experienced in the first few months of hard lockdown, we lost 3 million jobs. 2 million of those jobs were directly affecting women because women held those positions. And as women also contribute to the economy, child and healthcare as well as education hangs in a balance, purely because women are now being burdened with additional home care, domestic work, child care, and even homeschooling. So further to the staggering job losses and often unequal roles in the workplace, we have to carry an additional burden. And that impacts both on work life as well as home life.
Sure. And it is a massive impact that it has had with regard to that. So gender inequality existed before, and you touched on that. It happened and has been around. How has the pandemic compounded this issue?
Before COVID-19, women spent on average 6 more hours per week looking at childcare and contributing to unpaid childcare. Since the pandemic, that has increased to 7.5 more hours than men. Coupled with this is the constant battle of equalizing gender representativity at board and executive level, which due to other contributing factors will now also take much longer to be realized.
Sure. And then in terms of socioeconomic historical factors, obviously they play a role. And how do they impact on women in the workplace?
I think we must also acknowledge the fact that we've made significant strides in the workplace with regards to exceptional policies and legislation that provide for protection, such as laws that prevent discrimination. However, many women are still constrained by cultural, economic, and social barriers that influence their participation in the economy. If you look at our gender pay gap between 23 and 35% that existed in South Africa specifically, the global gender gap is now increased to 135 years. So it will take us 135 years to reach gender parity, which is an increase of 36 years that existed 36 years. Well, let me put it was 99 years pre-COVID. So an increase of 36 years for us to obtain gender parity is a direct result of COVID-19.
Sure, that is astounding. So how can we address the issues of the gender pay gap, Doctor?
Ultimately and directly influencing income and equality is education and exposure to opportunities. Women traditionally are being stereotyped for certain industries and certain positions, and based on that, they make certain educational choices. If we remove that gender stereotyping in terms of education, in terms of sectors and opportunities, we can expose women to greater experience, greater exposure, which can ultimately close this pay gap.
If you've just joined the conversation, we're chatting to Dr. Deonita Damons. Such an honor and a privilege to be connected with you. And we are also live on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. So you can go and review and watch this again for yourself if you'd like to. And we're talking about the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on women in the workspace and that whole inequality that still remains. And this very poignant as we are celebrating Women's Month here in South Africa. Of course, when it comes to different work segments and work sectors, there are different roles that get played. You know, I was chatting to somebody over the weekend and they were saying about how their mother-in-law, has been directly impacted because she used to run a bed and breakfast guest house kind of setup. And because of the pandemic, she's lost her job. And that's the reality that, you know, typically when an owner of a bed and breakfast would be looking for an employee, it would typically be a lady because ladies just have certain skills that men don't have, and then vice versa. So how do we tackle this occupational segregation?
Well, I think I don't want us to be reliant on government because we rely on government for a whole lot of things. So it's adding additional regulation and adding additional policies is not really going to address the issue. It goes down to recruitment strategies and policies of corporates and companies and how they are going to ensure that the stereotyping diminishes over the years and over the period by accommodating women and accommodating specific aspects of women uniqueness. For example, flexible working hours, making provision for childcare, childcare, to allow women to progress within the workplace without having to carry an additional burden. Also considering that women have unique skills, as you've just pointed out, and make it attractive for women to cross the corporate gap of this is for a male-dominated industry or this is a female-dominated industry. But it's up to corporates, and corporate role must be installed within the culture of the organization to make it attractive to appoint women in different positions and different levels within the organization.
Yeah, no, really, that is so key. I remember when my wife was pregnant with our first child, you know, just the reality of how that workspace and, you know, her employer at the time was kind enough to give her the mandatory maternity leave, but it's a tricky balance once that time is over. Correct.
And sometimes there's a perception that if a woman has greater priority towards childcare and home care, she's not as dedicated or committed to the workplace. And that is a perception that we deal with. So women that have to choose between starting a family or progressing in the corporate ladder.
And that's unhealthy, hey, Dr. Deonita? That is really unhealthy because, let's face it, families are the building blocks of our country.
Apologies, my dogs also want to join in the conversation. I'm going to try and see if I could. Okay, that should be over. It is unhealthy.
Commercial break brought to you by Woofy.
No, it is unfortunate. And as you say, because your home life and family is the building blocks and the foundation, determining what you are going to do and how you're going to achieve it in life. And it also impacts, again, on the decisions you make in terms of your education and in terms of the career. Because if it is perceived that a father cannot be a stay-at-home father and still be a corporate player, then can you imagine what they view a woman that decides to be a stay-at-home mom? And all of a sudden, she has to look for employment opportunities due to personal reasons. The corporate recruitment practices makes it very difficult for a woman to re-enter the workplace, purely because we don't take into consideration all the other factors that could have contributed to these decisions that they make.
So good. Dr. Deonita, that's where we're going to leave it for today, but thank you so much for chatting to us. Dr. Deonita Damons is an expert in career guidance at Boston City campus. It's been really great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you and your loved ones all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to the listeners.